What's going on, Guardians? I'm the Beyond Light Guardian, and in today's video, we're going to be going over the best blue, yes, you heard that right, the best blue weapons you can use inside the Legend or Master Lost Sectors so far in Beyond Light. And as we start to get more Lost Sectors, there's going to be some coming to the moon and some other destinations. We'll be able to add on to that list so that you'll be able to get through these Lost Sectors. So whether you're a veteran or a new light and you don't have all these exotic weapons and all these legendary weapons, you're able to use these simple blues that are really good and allow you to get the job done. But before we move any further, if you enjoy the content, be sure to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, comment down below some of your favorite weapons or some weapons that you've noticed that are underrated and could be useful to others inside these lost sectors. So the way that we're going to break down this video is we're going to go through each weapon slot. So we're going to go through the kinetic, the energy weapon slot, and the power weapon slot. And we'll break those down into the 3 different types of mods for the champions in these lost sectors for each slot. So to start off, we're going to be doing the anti-barrier mods, and we're going to start off with this pulse rifle here. So I just got done using these weapons, and I can honestly say that I can attest to them working out. And you can check my channel of the different videos that I have of using blue weapons and using them under leveled. So these should work out pretty well for you. The first one here on my lower end of the list for pulse rifles, and this is an anti-barrier weapon, is the Bayesian MSU. Now, one thing about this weapon and some of the perks of this weapon is it has, for those people that like the full auto, it has full auto alloy magazine, so it means that it reloads a lot faster when you're empty. And if you're like me, I'm a habitual reloader. It doesn't matter if I have 150 in a mag, I can shoot 10 bullets and I'm going to try to reload. So this is good for, you know, emptying out the magazine and still being able to have a quick reload, because the reload speed is kind of slow. The downsides to this weapon, at least for me, is the lower rounds per minute. Now, I love the no time to explain, and it has a little bit lesser rounds per minute than this, but yet I don't know, I feel like this shoots incredibly slow, but it does get the job done. So the next weapon we're going to move on to for the pulse rifles here in the kinetic slot is the PSI Cirrus or Cirrus 2. Now this is hands down one of my favorite blues in terms of all of Destiny, and the one thing that I love about this weapon is the auto loading holster. I can't, once again, I reload a crap ton, so this is really useful for me because I could just shoot, switch over to my power weapon if I need to get some heavy DPS and switch back and not have to worry about reloading. And as you can see, the reload speed on this weapon is really low. Has a decent magazine size at 42. And another thing that I like about this weapon is the 540 rounds per minute on this weapon. So it shoots really fast, and you have the deeper ammo reserves, slightly faster reload when magazine is empty. So overall, just a better weapon. It has the extended mag, and that helps out here. A couple of different sights that don't really do too much, it's just kind of aesthetics. As you can see here, just kind of visuals. But overall, 10 out of 10 for me on this weapon. It is very useful, and I highly recommend you use it if you don't have a good pulse in your inventory. So continuing on for our anti-barrier weapons, we're going to move over to the SMGs for the kinetic slot. The first one here we have is the Protostar CSU. Now this weapon here, I didn't know how I was going to fare with it, to be honest, because it is a 900 RPM weapon and a 34 magazine size. Typically we utilize a lot of 600 RPM weapons, but this weapon honestly was a lot fun to use. It has pretty good stability, at least if you're a PC user. Compared to a lot of other SMGs, has pretty decent range and pretty decent stability. And with all these weapons, it's all about the playstyle that you utilize. So there's certain lost sectors that you can utilize these weapons in that may seem like you need to be far back, but you can work your way towards the enemies and utilize this weapon. But this weapon has a pendant mag, so the weapon's magazine is built for higher capacity, so increased magazine size and moving target, which is also just always awesome to utilize. Just increased movement speed and target acquisition when moving while aiming down sight. So good strafing, which is always good inside of these lost sectors and any PvE content. And once again, the scopes here don't really do too much, just kind of aesthetics, visuals to be able to help you to stay on target. So the next weapon we have here in our slot is the Phillippis-B, and I'm pretty sure I'm saying it wrong, but nonetheless, this was another fun weapon, and honestly, I had a lot more fun using the 900 RPM than this one, but nonetheless, it did get the job done. It has accurized rounds, so the weapon can fire longer at longer distances, and then dynamic sway reduction. So that's nice. You can shoot farther, and it keeps a little bit more stability. And as you can see, it has pretty good, decent range. Probably one of the downsides to this weapon is the stability is slightly off, and the magazine size, I would like to see it around 35 or so, or at least 30. But 26 you'll be able to do with it. And once again, just the scopes are just aesthetics. They don't really do too much, change off too much in terms of actual gameplay, just helping you stay on target. It's more of a placebo. So last but not least, our last weapon for our kinetic slot is the scout rifle, and this is for the overloads. As you'll see, I will not have any auto rifles whatsoever, because if you're utilizing an auto rifle for an overload champion in a solo lost sector or any PvE content, more power to you, but I will not. And this is the Armillary PSU. Now, if you guys have heard me mention, especially in a lot of my guides, I am a big fan of 200 RPM scout rifles. In fact, I don't like to use anything else but 200 RPM scout rifles. If I have to use a 200 RPM, or if I have to use a scout rifle, I want to utilize a 200 RPM scout rifle. But this 180 is not bad at all. It does have high cal rounds, which does help out a lot, and it gives a slightly increased range, especially when you're dealing with these champions. And you would like to see payload here, explosive payload here, but this does get the job done. And then on top of that, having quick draw, because you want to utilize your power weapon to get champions down fast while also maintaining, make sure they're stunned, and especially dealing with any overloads. Chances are they are teleporting overload with the minotaurs and the captains. You want to be able to get this weapon back out fast to be able to stun them, because they'll regenerate while they're teleporting. But once again, all the scopes is aesthetics, just placebo. Doesn't really do too much over here. Gives you slightly more increased range, but overall, it's just up to personal preference here. So moving on to our energy weapons. Now, this weapon here is like weapon 1A for me, and we'll get to weapon 2A later on. But Madrugada SR2 is a scout rifle, and scout rifles, once again, are utilized for overloads, and this one does wonders. I do not use any other scout rifle inside this slot. Even if I'm using my normal setup and I want to kill overload champions and I'm not dealing with too much of high-end PvE content, I'm utilizing this thing here because it looks amazing, it feels amazing. It has this alloy magazine, so faster reloads. It already has a pretty good reload speed with really good handling. These range of stability, you don't even have to worry about that, because it's a laser. It has explosive payload, which we know is, as I mentioned, really helps out a lot against overload champions and with their teleporting and just kind of keeping them stunned. And this weapon comes really in handy when it comes down to concealed void. And the one thing about these weapons is that you want to utilize, especially your energy weapons, in the different lost sectors that have those elemental damages. So you want to be able to look either on Today in Destiny, or just looking at the modifier card and seeing, okay, well, which weapon could I utilize that will give me a damage increase. So each lost sector has a 50% increased damage, whether it's void, whether it's arc, or whether it's solar. Now you'll take 50% more damage, but this is really useful. This is the only activity that I can find that you have an increased damage buff that's geared towards you. This was geared a lot in Destiny 1, and then they just kind of screwed it up in Destiny 2, and pretty much everything can one-shot you. So once again, this is just an awesome scout rifle. 10 out of 10. I highly recommend you pick this up. Like I said, and all these weapons here, if you just notice just by playing the game, literally you could go into patrol and just shoot some enemies, and chances are one of these weapons are going to drop for you. In fact, there's a weapon that I'm going to show later that I was trying to farm for, and I just end up getting it just that quickly. So once again, highly recommend. This should be on your list of weapons. You should not go anywhere without this. If you do not have a good scout rifle, this is your go-to right here. So the next weapon we're going to look at here is the Farina-2MG, and I just call this the Recluse Reskin because it is exactly what it is, but it gets the job done. Has tactical mags, so this weapon has multiple tactical improvements: slightly increased stability, increased reload speed, slightly increased magazine size with snapshot, which is always handy. And then once again, you can get a slightly more range and stability at the cost of handling with small bore, but I just choose to use fluted barrel here because it just does wonders. It's a laser, but also it's a 900 RPM magazine with 37 magazine size. So 900 RPM with a 37 magazine size, and you can see that handling, that stability, don't worry about that range because it takes care of everything. You don't have to worry about a thing. Hands down, one of my favorite weapons to utilize when I do have to use it, because if normally there's not too many times that I have to use a anti-barrier weapon and a unstoppable weapon. It's usually overload and anti-barrier, so I don't get to utilize this weapon as much because once again I'm using the Madrugada SR2 for my scout rifle, and I'm using something else for my anti-barrier in my kinetic slot, or I'm using one of my favorite legendaries, the Stars and Shadows, in this spot, and I'll utilize Night Watch up top in the kinetic slot. So hands down, once again, the Recluse reskin functions exactly the same without the different perks it had, but takes care of the job. The next thing we're going to look at here is the Harmony-21. Once again, the scopes here gives you slightly increased range here. A pendant mag, so increased magazine size. And it's crazy how amazing these perks are, how simple the perks are, and amazing these perks are on these blues that you can't even, it's hard to even get rolled on legendaries. So I highly recommend, like I said, I'm going to keep these weapons. I have them locked up, and I'll utilize them for the next season when it's time to level up, because they do wonders. But it also has Grave River, so melee kills reloads a portion of this weapon's magazine, grants ammo for primary ammo weapons, reloads from reserves for special and heavy ammo weapons. So once again, if you are a habitual reloader like I am, this will do wonders for you. But it's a 900 RPM weapon with a 35 magazine size, slightly decent reload speed, handling, just kind of balanced stats here. But once again, it just functions amazingly. It's pretty steady and very reliable with an arc damage. So that's always good to utilize, especially if you don't have an Ikelos or a 7th Seraph SMG. This will do wonders for you in terms of the arc slot. The next weapon we're going to look at here is the Encore-25. Now, this is probably my least used weapon because I have better weapons in this slot in terms of anti-barrier, but it does have high cal rounds, which is awesome, and Outlaw, which you get an increased reload speed with precision kills. And with the reload speed being kind of at a balanced state here, it is good to have that Outlaw. Once again, it's a 390 RPM pulse rifle, so slightly on the slower end for me, but it does get the job done with a decent magazine size of 36. So, and once again, it is arc, so it'll help you out a lot in terms of the different arc bosses or different arc modifiers that you can use in these different lost sectors. The last one we're going to have here for our energy weapons are the Argona PR2, and this is a void weapon and one of the few void weapons that you'll come across here. But it has flared magwell, so slightly increased stability, greatly increased reload speed. These different scopes here with slightly increased range for the transmission, MS7, and Zen moment. So this one here is a 450 RPM pulse rifle, which is right up my alley. 30 magazine size, would like to see that bigger, but ultimately it has a flared magwell, so the reload speed is amazing, the handling speed is amazing, stability, range, impact, and once again, it is a void. There's very few void modifiers that can benefit you here, but nonetheless, there are certain lost sectors that you have that you may have void enemies. So if you wanted to utilize this, you could, just to kind of deal with those enemies. But once again, this is a pretty solid blue pulse rifle in my opinion, especially if you don't have good weapons or if you're just starting. These are weapons that you'll get probably 100 times over within a day of playing, 2-3 hours of playing, and probably an hour of playing, you will get multiple of these weapons in. So I highly recommend you just to hold on to them, and hey, you may never know when you may need these. So moving on to our power weapons. So in our power weapon slot, once again, Bungie does a really good job at making these blues good while making some of the legendaries absolutely awful. It's pretty crazy to me. But you got the Plemusa-B, which is a grenade launcher here. If you are a grenade launcher type, it has proximity grenades with auto-loading holster. So once again, you can fire off your shots, switch over to your pulse rifle, get your shots in there, switch back, and it's already loaded for you. I would love to have seen a auto-loading holster for the scout rifles or somewhere inside of the energy weapon slot, and this would have just completed my setup, honestly, because it works out for me never having to reload. Pretty much all I have to worry about is switching from weapons and doing constant DPS without having to worry about reloading. So this has a decent magazine size, 5 magazine size with 120 rounds per minute. Just balanced out over and overall, but it does get the job done. And like I said, it is an amazing grenade launcher. This is probably B on my list. It's not up there with my A's, but it is definitely a good, solid overall power weapon that will help you do DPS to bosses, especially in these lost sectors and enemies inside these lost sectors. So last but certainly not least, we have our, we call it 2A. So we had the Madrugada as our 1A. We'll call this 2A. And that's the Reginar-B. Now this weapon here I found by accident, and I didn't realize that this perk right here. This weapon fires a small auto tracking missile. Missile locks onto target when aimed. I didn't realize that, so I was trying to figure out why in the world couldn't I find the Reginar-B that could track, because I accidentally deleted it, and it turns out that it was one of the intrinsic perks. And I would tell you, this is a must-have. If you have it in your vault, if you have it in your postmaster, lock this and do not get rid of it. This is one amazing rocket launcher. I call it the baby truth because it just does wonders, especially in these lost sectors. It has field prep, so increased ammo reserves, fast reload stove, and ready when you're crouching. You have black powder, so this weapon explosives are more effective, slightly increased blast radius, decreased stability, so that doesn't do anything against you there. And just overall, like I said, it is an amazing rocket launcher. I utilize this rocket launcher pretty much if you're looking at me doing blues or blue runs for lost sectors or whatever the case may be, then I'm typically using the Reginar-B because it's just my go-to. It's reliable. It just gets the job done, and it allows me to be able to free up an exotic slot, so I don't have to worry about using the truth unless it's really heavy in PV content where I have to spam the truth over and over and over, which that's way later, in-game content stuff that you have to worry about. This lost sectors aren't really in-game to me. They aren't really that difficult to deal with, especially when you know what you're doing, even if you're under leveled. But those have been my favorite blues so far. Like I said, there are very few that drop, but these are the ones that are really useful and really come in handy, and came in handy for me when I didn't have really good weapons to utilize in my legendary slots. So this is for any new light person or just a veteran that may want to look for a good alternative, so they don't have to waste an exotic slot or whatever the case may be, or they just want something that'll get the job done, something that they don't have to spend all day grinding for, because everybody hates to grind, including me. And as you can see here, these weapons actually, I had just got done running through some lost sectors with this and kind of dropped my power level a little bit here to try to be able to make sure I tested out these weapons again to make sure that this wasn't a placebo for me. And I mean, these weapons just do wonders. They absolutely shred. But I've been the Beyond Light Guardian. If this video has helped you in any way, just be sure to leave a like, share it around, do whatever you want or don't. I'm going to be Beyond Light Guardian, and I'll catch you in the next video.